At the convent of Sweet Mercy, young girls are being raised to be killers. Some have inherited old bloods, which bestow upon them special talents. Sweet Mercy hones its novices' skills with great care. It takes 10 years to educate a Red Sister in the deadly arts of blade and fist. But even the mistresses of Sword and Shadow don't fully understand what they have purchased when Nona Grey is brought to their halls as a child of 8, falsely accused of murder, but guilty of worse. In her short life, Nona has made many powerful enemies, and despite the security and isolation of the convent, her secret, violent past will one day find her out. Nona must come to terms with her demons and learn to become a deadly assassin if she is to survive.
Hello there. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. This is Toast Dragon Fantasy, and today I'm going to be doing my very first book review. I will be doing the review on Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. Before I start, just a heads up as to how this review will work. I will start off with a non-spoiler section for those of you who have not read the book and who are interested in it, and I will follow it with a spoiler discussion about certain aspects of the book which took my interest in particular. I think that's all that needs to be said really, so without further ado, let's just jump straight into the review. I'm going to start off by talking about the characters, and in particular I will start off by talking about our main protagonist, which is Nona Grey. She was the 9-year-old girl who was falsely accused of murder. I found her character to be very determined, I found her character to be very ruthless at times, but also very vulnerable. There was definitely a vulnerable side to her throughout the book, which stems from her upbringing. Very mistrustful, certainly towards the start of her time at the convent. She's a character that's been hardened by a very hard life. A whole lot of things get explained in a variety of flashbacks, which give you an insight as to why she is like she is. That kind of keeps in with the fact that she can only really function at her best when she's angry. There are lessons that get taught at this convent which are to do with serenity and to do with mindfulness and all that, and Nona can't manage those. She can't use those lessons because her power and her ability stems from her anger, which would happen with the kind of upbringing that she's had. I love Nona as a main protagonist. I thought overall she was very, very strong. She's flawed, which is always good to see in a main protagonist. She's just very, very likeable. My only issue with her is that by the end of the book there is a danger that she will kind of turn into a Mary Sue character, and by that I mean that she is almost too good by the end. That is never a good thing. I find it doesn't make for good character development if that happens. So that's my only worry about Nona in subsequent books. What I loved about the characters on the whole, in fact, is that, particularly the group of girls, is that they all played off against each other really, really well. So when it was just the kind of parts, when it was just the girls, it was wonderful dynamic. There was a wonderful dynamic to it. I didn't quite get the same feeling with the nuns, however. I thought that, with the exception of Abbess Glass and Sister Apple, I had a hard time, even by the end of the book, distinguishing which one was which from just names. It didn't help that they had their names as well as their titles, which were both referred to throughout the book. It made it quite hard at times to keep track of who was who, and not a lot of them, for me, had particularly distinctive personalities. They all kind of merged into one, with the exception of the Abbess, as I mentioned, and Sister Apple, who was very strong. And then you got the kind of villains. When they were about, they were good. You know, they were pretty solid villains, but unfortunately they weren't really involved that much. So it kind of took away from them a little bit, which was a shame because he was sufficiently nasty when he was actually about. So that was a bit of a shame as well. So now I'll just go into a little bit of a talk about the plot. I found the plot to be paced quite well. It was broken up into kind of 2 halves, and it was interspersed with a whole series of flashbacks and flash forwards. I do feel that the flashbacks at times deterred from the pace. I don't think all of them were necessary, especially in moments of high tension. There were times when a flashback was included, and I found that to be quite grating because it detracted from, as I said, it detracted from those high tension moments. I don't think they were needed, personally. However, one of the flash forwards that was included was brilliant, and it was a major highlight of the book, and I will talk about that in more detail in the discussion section after this non-spoiler review, but it worked wonderfully well. It came at just the right time as well, I think. There was a danger with the plot because the whole story effectively was based around this convent. So there was a danger that those scenes at the convent kind of meandered a bit and led to kind of going around in circles, and so there were moments outside the convent which were thrown in, which were necessary for sure. I wouldn't say that any of them were a particular highlight for me in the book, but they were certainly needed to break up the pace. I thought that the classes were on the whole pretty strong. Obviously she's there to learn how to become an assassin, so she's obviously got to learn a load of different stuff, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's a typical assassin learning journey, if you like. She's obviously got the battle and the fighting lessons. I loved, again, Sister Apple's classes. I loved the Blade classes. A few of the others, as I said, were perhaps a little less readable. The ending, which I obviously won't give anything away, it was spectacular. It was just the right amount of action and speed and gore and all kinds of things were thrown in at the end, and I whizzed through the last 50 pages. I whizzed through the last 100 pages actually, because they changed location for about the last 100 pages, and I thought from that moment the book revamped up another level. I thought the last 100 pages were really, really good. The fight scenes throughout the book were good. You know, well described, well plotted, well choreographed. The magic system in terms of two of the blood types, the Quantal and the Marjal, I thought was a little confusing. I got mixed up as to which one was dealing with which. I don't think it was particularly well explained. I think it's one of those things that will probably develop in later books. So it's not a major issue for this book. There was enough there to keep me interested. And the final thing I'll talk about in this non-spoilery section is the setting, and on the whole I absolutely loved it. I thought the convent was brilliantly described. I loved the scenes in the convent, and obviously the majority of the book was at the convent, so that was good. As someone of my age, it's hard not to compare a private boarding school, if you like, to Hogwarts, and there were Hogwarts vibes to this. Obviously the tone of the book's very, very different and the storyline's very different, but the convent at times felt like Hogwarts. It felt secure and it felt comfortable and it felt inviting, and obviously the characters played into that as well. You could tell that they were all very secure. It made it feel like a good place to be. I also loved the world as a whole. The world is effectively a strip of land sandwiched in between two major sheets of ice which are kind of closing in on this strip of land. Very original concept, I think. And as I said, the last 100 pages were a particular highlight of the story, and the setting changed for those last 100 pages or so, and it was sufficiently dangerous. It made the girls sufficiently vulnerable, very vulnerable at times. Just very strong throughout. Actually, the settings were very strong throughout. It was a major highlight of the book. And yeah, I guess that's about it really. Those are the major things I want to talk about, and those are the major things I want to review. Coming up on your screen you'll see the Dragon Scale score that I gave this book, and with a score of 82 setting, it's the highest score I've given a book this year. To be honest, the book was strong across the board. With a score of 80 overall, it's enough to put Red Sister second in my rundown of the books that I've read this year. It comes in behind The Final Empire, which is still my favourite read of the year, but Red Sister on the whole was a fantastic read. Loved every minute of it, and I would highly recommend it to people who are fans of, you know, Joe Abercrombie, other gritty type writers, Adrian Selby. It flew by and I really, really enjoyed it. Right then, well, this is the time when I say goodbye to all you non-spoilery people. If you have not picked up the book yet, go and get yourself a copy, get it read, and then come back and watch the rest of this video, because now I'm going to go in to talk about some of the big plot points that particularly caught my interest. You gone? It's just us now. It's just us. Okay, this video is already going to be really long, so I'm just going to try and rattle through some of these. The Blade Path. I'm happy that it took Nona so long to complete the Blade Path, because it was just another example of how Nona is not a perfect character and never will be a perfect character, and she makes mistakes, and you could tell her frustration was building as she couldn't complete this path. Having said that, the manner in which she did complete it in the end, I didn't particularly have a lot of time for. I thought it was a bit convoluted. I mean, it kind of keeps in with character, you know, that she couldn't take it serenely, she couldn't take it slowly and gently. She had to attack this blade path quickly, and it kept in with her character. But the fact that she did it in like 30 seconds was a bit, I don't know. I kind of wish that hadn't happened. Right, what about Forefoot? This is for budding writers. If there's one way of making sure your book is heart-wrenching, just throw in a scene where an animal gets hurt, and you'll have people gushing and tearing the book up and screaming at it and throwing it at walls and stuff. That's what I wanted to do to this. when 4-foot got, you know, whipped to death and stuff with Marcus and Hessa. It's just a horrible scene. It's just so brutal and so like vivid. So I didn't enjoy. Well, it was very, very readable. Like I couldn't take my eyes off the page, but it was not nice to read, was it? Let's be honest. Okay, so the shield test. So you had Nona. Nona was protecting Hessa from these 3 attacks to prove that she was a shield. The last one, the arrow, I'm sure, like it passed through her hand completely and then like embedded in her shoulder or something. And I'm thinking like, surely that would mean her hand has become completely useless. Like you don't recover from those kind of injuries, right? It just seems like the injury was a severe one, but she doesn't seem to have had any lasting effects from it. She did get hurt a lot, like an awful lot, and she seems to be very. I mean, maybe that's her blood or something, but well, she can take a lot of damage. Let's be honest. The flash forward was the best bit of the book by a mile. That moment when Ara, or Sister Thorn as she is then, is under attack from those soldiers, and then she beats the soldiers, and then a sister comes up to her, and then a sister attacks her, and then she falls down, and then the sister walks up to her to finish the job, and Ara says something like, "No, don't do it." That was so clever, because in the previous page, pretty much, you know, it just been found out that Nona's name was going to be Cage, right? So we're all assuming that it's Cage that is attacking Ara at that point, and that throws a whole different dynamic for the rest of the book. I thought it was so clever. And then by the end, obviously, it wasn't Cage that was the attacker, it was Clara. I thought that whole flash forward thing was amazing. It was so clever. Two of the big bugbears of the book. One was Risht. Was it Yisht? Risht. The character of Risht. I don't get her. Like, she's obviously this spy or something. She was a spy, or she was sent in by the Emperor's sister to get the heart, but she had like digging powers or something, and that's what's getting me mixed up about this Marshal and Quantal. Like, is she a Marshal or is she a Quantal? Like, is it the Marshals that get these kind of little powers? Because like there's the shadow weaving as well. You got shadow weaving, digging, like other little kind of superpowers, if you like, and then there's this other one which is like a major power. I didn't quite get that whole dynamic at all, and I found that the whole trying to poison her, stuffing her in a barrel, shipping her off to God knows where, only for her to return without anything being questioned. I thought all of that was a little bit far-fetched, a little bit convoluted, and I also didn't like the Chosen One prophecy. For a start, I don't know what the Chosen One is chosen for. Like, is it to end the war, or is it to start a war, or is it to become all powerful, or because they say it's fake? And then obviously the Chosen One changed throughout the story. Like it was Nona, and then it was Ara for a bit, and then it ended up being Zol, and I found that a bit. As I said earlier, the whole ranging last 100 pages out on the range was brilliant. I loved the setting. I loved the wilderness. I didn't quite understand the bandits, but I don't really know why they were there. But again, I guess that might be revealed in later books, perhaps. I knew Clara was up to something when there was a part when she turned up late. Nona had found Ara or someone, and she'd found a couple of the others, maybe, and then Clara came from behind and caught them up, and I think it might have been Ara saying, "Well, why are you so far behind everyone else?" And then Clara, she came up with some excuse about, I'm a city girl, I always get lost, blah blah blah. From that moment on, I was like, yeah, you're up to something, aren't you? You're up to something bad. So I was kind of on the lookout for it from that moment on. I mean, is she a villain now? I suppose she kind of is, because Nona says that whole line, doesn't she, that she's now also a friend, but she's also an enemy at the same time. Right, okay, so there we go. Those are just some of the plot points, the spoilery bits that I wanted to get off my chest and talk about, because, as I said, I loved this book. It did have its issues, as with every single book, and I've tried to explain those issues as fairly as I can. So that's about it, really, for this review. If you have read it, obviously I'd love to know what you thought of it without leaving any spoilers in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, because that will tell me how well it's done. If you're new to the channel and you've only just discovered me today, check out some of my other videos, and if you enjoy them as well, then subscribe to the channel and you will be obviously notified when more videos come your way. I think that's all I've got for you today, so with that being said, my name is Mark, this is Toast Dragon Fantasy, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Goodbye.